What is up, guys? Rick Cactus here, and today we've got a brand new episode of Fan-Made Exotics, the only series that lets you submit an exotic weapon, armor, ghost shell, or heck, any Destiny exotic idea and have a chance for a realistic concept art to be made for it. Now that's because we've partnered with the artists Benjamin Radaman and Michael aka Rageblade, both of which will have their deviant arts linked in the description down below. Now, Michael is busy with exams, so it's going to be all Benjamin today. Guys, on the docket for today's video, we're going to showcase 5 featured exotics that all came from the comment section of last video, and then we're going to discuss some tips for getting your idea selected. Now, speaking of submitting your idea, all you need to do is make a comment in the comment section down below with what your exotic would look like and its perks and attributes. And guys, if you are planning to make a submission, make sure you're doing it on the newest video. If there's a newer video than this one, an annotation will pop up right now leading you to it. And by the way, guys, if you do enjoy this series and want to see more, please remember to support the video by liking and especially sharing. This series could definitely use your help. And let's get started then with the 5 featured exotics, starting us off with the Fair Judge exotic hand cannon concept by Sentinel Vortex. Now, this weapon has a few unique perks. Firstly, it has an intrinsic perk that makes it deal solar damage. So in Destiny 2, this would be an energy weapon. In Destiny 1, it would just be a primary with solar burn. Now, it has the first exotic perk as Harsh Judgment. Enemies killed by this weapon cause them to explode violently. So kind of like Firefly, but you don't need to get a headshot. And believe me, that's really good. Making it so that it can just be a body shot makes this kind of perk go from just a normal perk Firefly to a very powerful exotic ability because you are guaranteeing those explosions. It's actually quite similar to the Necrochasm already in game, where again you don't need to get a precision shot, you just need to kill an enemy and they explode with a thrall explosion. The amount of damage you can cause to adds if you do that and the amount of ad clearing potential weapons like this have are pretty insane. This is combined with the second exotic perk, Persuaded. While taking damage with this weapon equipped, your damage is increased on the next shot. Now that is really interesting. So if you are getting shot, your damage will increase the next time you shoot. Now, of course, by how much is it increased and how much damage you need to take for this perk to activate are really the balancing factors. Like if you get shot once and then your bullet does double damage, probably gonna be too much in PvP. But as long as the damage increase isn't, too ridiculous, maybe 10-20%, as long as it doesn't maybe change the actual shots needed to kill in PvP, this would be a very good perk, because in PvE, you're being shot just all of the time. Shot, hit by thralls, whatever. You're constantly taking like little chunks of damage. And getting even a slight damage bonus is going to help your overall damage output, and often going to make stuff that would normally take 2 shots to kill, let's say a Vandal, suddenly take maybe 1. And that could be very, very good. So a very interesting idea, and with this weapon, and keep your eye out for the other weapons as well, we have some definite Destiny 2 perk ideas. For example, the Persuaded perk, where if you get damaged, your next bullet increases in damage. That could just be an overall perk that you find on Destiny 2 weapons. I think that's a very good idea. So again, we're going to probably see more of that with the coming featured exotics. But we need to move on now to the next featured exotic, which is the Exxons Breath exotic auto rifle concept by Bandit Nation. Now this weapon definitely has some unique abilities, firstly with the intrinsic perk Fallen Engineering. This weapon fires shock rifle rounds. So the Fallen shock rifle with its seeking electric bullets that we've seen absolutely everywhere, finally you were getting the chance to use that as a Guardian. So that is just a very powerful weapon overall. The bullets seek, and I'm sure you guys have experienced, they seek pretty heavily around corners and everything. Now this is combined with the exotic perk Exxons Wisdom, When fighting certain enemies, a specific stackable buff will be added until combat ends. So, when you're fighting the Fallen, there's going to be a stackable movement buff as you kill enemies. Next up, when you're fighting the Cabal, it's a stackable armor buff. For the Hive, it's a stackable damage buff. For the Vex, a stackable recovery buff. And for Guardians, this has it so it's actually a debuff. You lose 1 armor, recovery, and agility, but I don't think that's necessary. I would just say no buff overall. So that's actually really cool. Like if you're fighting the Hive, you're going to get that damage buff. The more Hive you kill, this weapon's going to be doing more and more and more damage. But if you're fighting, the Vex, you get that recovery buff. You're more survivable. You can, go into encounters and play a lot more aggressively because you get that recovery buff. So that is a really interesting idea. Depending on what faction you're fighting, you get these different bonuses. And that's going to make the gun feel and act a lot differently. So in PvE, this would be a pretty powerful weapon. You get a decent bonus no matter which enemy you are fighting, except for the Taken, unfortunately. But in PvP, I honestly have no idea. Would the seeking properties of the shock rifle be insane? It might be, right? Being able to seek people behind corners seems like it would be really good in PvP. However, that insane travel time that you get from those shots would potentially just doom you every time. Like, you're not going to win a lot of 1v1 gunfights. You're going to die before your bullets even hit the enemy. So, would it be good? Since we've seen nothing even close to this in PvP, I can't honestly say. But heck, it'd be pretty cool to find out. Now moving on from there, we have the Talons III exotic hand cannon concept by Gabrieloid Studios. This weapon, firstly, it has a 5-round magazine, so rather low just to give you guys an idea. It has an intrinsic perk down the list. As the magazine depletes, the more damage each individual bullet does. So basically, it's a slightly different, potentially more powerful version of the glass half full perk that we already have in Destiny. Now this is combined with the exotic perk Mimic. When the final round is expended, if all other shots have been landed, gain the final bullet back. And remember that final bullet is going to be doing that extra damage as provided by the down the list perk. So, very interesting and very PvE focused perks. Now of course, down the list is going to be quite powerful in PvP potentially. Like maybe with the last 2 rounds, if you get a double headshot, you would be able to kill a Guardian in the Crucible. However, if you actually go down to those last 2 rounds, it's pretty do or die at that point. If you miss or get a body shot, you're going to have to reload. Like there's no follow-up shot, so you're just going to be screwed unless you have perfect accuracy. So maybe that could actually be balanced if you have to do that. Now, however, the other perk is definitely more PvE centric. The fact that you have to land all other shots. Well, if you land all other shots in PvP, the enemy is already dead. So that won't come up there. Where it will come up is dealing damage against, Hive Majors, Fallen Majors like Captains and so on, and of course against PvE bosses. And that seems like a great gun for just overall DPS against those higher level PvE targets. Being able to, in a strike boss fight, get those 5 rounds that ramp up in damage all on the same boss, which is overall going to do a decent amount of damage, and then triggering that last round to come back and get a 6th very powerful landing shot. That again could be quite good, and that's going to out DPS other hand cannons that don't have these damage benefits. But of course it's going to again be regulated for PvE, so it won't be that offensive in PvP. Now moving on from there, we have the Out of Time exotic shotgun concept by Devil Tha. Now this shotgun, it has a few very interesting abilities. Firstly, it has the intrinsic perk Relativity. When you get a kill with this weapon, enemies in your general area move, reload, shoot, and regenerate abilities slower. So basically, you're slowing down time. You're not actually slowing down time because, of course, how are you going to have that ability in Destiny, right? You can't actually slow down time. Your other teammates would be like, what the heck is happening? It would just be an ability you can't actually have in game. But if you make all the enemies around you do things slower, like move, get a movement speed debuff, regenerate their health a little bit slower, reload slower, all of that stuff, then it kind of feels like you are slowing down time. Now, of course, this is a very powerful ability, and that's why I'm not sure getting a single kill is a correct way to balance it. Perhaps getting all kills with like rounds in a magazine, then you activate that ability, so when you're reloading and getting ready to engage the enemies, they're slower, like they're gonna have a huge disadvantage, and then you can spring on top of them and get this advantage for the next magazine. That would probably be a more balanced way to apply this perk, because it is a really interesting, really cool perk, but it's very powerful, so you gotta be careful with stuff like this. This is also combined with the exotic perk Time to Fight. Your movement speed, reload speed, rate of fire, and regeneration of your abilities get faster the more enemies are in proximity. This is actually a pretty balanced perk because it's going to come up way more, almost entirely more, in PvE. Because there's never going to be more than like 3 enemies right near you in PvP, and if there are, you're already dead. Like, you're not going to get that much of an advantage. You don't want a bunch of enemies right near you in PvP. Like, that is a death sentence. But in PvE, when you're surrounded by a hive dropship and they're all dropping in front of you, having this big bonus to movement speed, rate of fire, all of that stuff, that is a pretty sweet ability. So, very cool concept, and again, a very cool idea for how to introduce that time-slowing feeling without, again, actually technically introducing it. But it's time to move on to the last featured concept we're going over today, which is the Edge of Insanity, exotic pulse rifle concept by Retribution. This weapon, it's got some very, very interesting stuff going on. So firstly, it has the intrinsic perk Insanity. Each kill you get with this weapon grants a stack of Insanity. This stacks up to 20 times. Insanity stacks grant bonuses to weapon firing speed and bonus movement speed, while also darkening your screen with each stack, and whenever you lose a stack of Insanity, so if you don't kill enemies for a little bit, you will lose a stack, and that will deal damage to your Guardian. Now, the exotic perk is Madness. While you have all 20 stacks of Insanity, you hold down the circle on the PlayStation, so the same thing you use in Destiny 2 to activate your class ability, it's what you use to Shade Step in Destiny right now, and then you're going to enter a state of Madness. While you're in this state, you gain increased weapon handling and reload speed. However, your health will start to quickly go down. You can actually regain health by dealing damage. Dealing damage while in your Madness state will heal you depending on how much damage you deal. Now, your Insanity stacks at this point will just go down and down and down until eventually at the very end it will take 50% of your health and just leave you there pretty weak, just waiting to recover. So, a lot of stuff going on, but it is a very interesting idea in the sense that, alright, can you have these kind of stack-focused weapons in Destiny? We've seen other games that kind of have stuff similar to this. Borderlands, and especially playing the Necromancer, reminds me of this. We have stacks of, I think in that game, it's the Anarchy stacks. And so can you have these stacks-focused weapons in Destiny? Well, in the one hand, they're very, very dedicated to PvE. Like, getting 20 stacks of Insanity, getting 20 kills, you're not going to do that in PvP. Like, especially with the new 4v4 format in Destiny 2, it's just not going to happen. It might happen, and if it does, it'll be freaking sick, and you'll see it in a montage for sure, but it's mainly going to be activatable in PvE. And in there, it's not too ridiculous to ask someone to get 20 kills, 20 stacks of this madness, and then getting a special, like, weapons-focused ability, almost like a weapons-focused super. That is a pretty cool idea as well. Heck, we have artifacts in Destiny right now that completely take away your super, like they alter your super. So having a weapon that gives you this crazy ability, is it that crazy? Well, potentially we could even see some design space left in Destiny for weapons like this. The one thing I would add is like a damage bonus when you're in your state of madness, because again, you're never going to activate it in PvP, so you don't have to worry about it being overpowered there, and it doesn't seem like as much of a benefit to go into this state of madness. If you got a damage bonus as well, that would be pretty cool, where you're hurting yourself because you're in the state of madness and you've got to keep doing damage to keep yourself alive. That is a pretty sweet idea. And so guys, that is it for the 5 featured exotics for this episode. Now on to some tips for getting selected. Firstly, Make sure that your idea is realistic for Destiny. Getting a kill and turning into a dragon sounds cool, but it's never actually going to be in the game. Secondly, try to self-regulate your idea. Make sure that your idea isn't overpowered. Getting a kill and instantly getting an overshield is way too powerful for PvP. Thirdly, try to make sure that your idea isn't too complicated. If you've got paragraphs and paragraphs explaining what your weapon does and every single perk is unique and it would take me 10 minutes just to explain your weapon, I can't select you. But lastly, don't be afraid to completely break the traditional damage norms. I mean, heck, the Edge of Insanity was nothing even close to anything we see in Destiny right now. Don't be afraid to make, SMGs is an example we used to give, but SMGs are going to be in Destiny 2, so we should see a lot more of those. But heavy, hand cannons, spears, we've had it all, so don't be afraid to get some crazy ideas flowing. And guys, that is going to be it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, again, please remember to support this series by liking and especially sharing. If you guys want to see more fan-made exotic episodes, be sure to slap that subscribe button. Now, if you guys want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickCactus. That's linked in the description down below, as is my Twitch channel, which you can also follow. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.